Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devin Decker, and joining me, my host companion, who didn't have his birthday ruined by the visit of Jill Biden. Big round of applause for Sejohn Sarwick. Sejohn.
Thank you. I'm working off of daylight savings energy right now.
Oh,
So,
that's
yeah.
the best kind.
Yeah.
Remember, even though this drops on Monday, all of our clocks fell back an hour yesterday.
Right. Yeah,
So
yeah. So I've got that extra hour of sleep and I'm ready to kick some ass, but I purposely didn't change any of the analog clocks in my house to keep myself on my toes all day.
that that seems like you're lazy. That seems like that's a problem that's going to fix itself in maybe 6 months.
I
Because
just yeah, well, I made the effort to change all my digital ones.
I cannot figure out. I have that little timer clock in the studio for when we do like 5 minute sessions.
Dev, I didn't
And
do shit. Every one of those clocks has an internal mechanism that's reset it for me.
okay, well, the Pampered Chef timer, not an ad, does not have that, and I'm hitting the clock button, and it just makes a beep noise. It doesn't let me do anything. So we'll figure out how to fix this one. But please make sure that you're running on standard time. Daylight savings time is over.
Yeah.
Or as some people say, happiness and sunshine is over, and we're back to misery and depression, which is interesting. Especially because, and this is the craziest thing to me, everybody wants to eliminate daylight savings time, but if we were to eliminate daylight savings time, we would be standard all the time, right? Like
Right,
that's
right,
what it would
right.
have to be.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is that we would all have to then come to an agreement with kind of like leap days and years and all of that shit that we have to deal with. Like we're gonna have to eventually come to terms with the fact that we'll have to add some time to the clock. Just agree, because the other thing that the daylight savings does is it also hides, like, they fudge the numbers a little bit. The daylight savings days like change, right? Like
Yeah.
that happens like every year. They're just whatever, like, some group of people somewhere decide they're gonna be there. So like I get the idea that they are fabricated in a way that like don't make sense and all of that nonsense. But there is a reason we do that, and part of that is because our sense of time does not quite line up with the ways in which we behave in space. And so all of it is just gymnastics to try and kind of like get ourselves back on track every twice a year, and in leap years and leap days again. Like we do that like at a larger scale on those. We're gonna have to kind of develop another day. It's gonna have to be like a daylight saving like moment, which I'm fine with, but we can't get away from it. Is what I mean. Is like we can't just ignore that it is a thing that we kind of have to do. Like it it is definitely something that is related to like harvest and all that sort of shit, right? Like that's the main reason that
Well,
we
actually,
supposedly
I
started
believe
it.
daylight savings time. No, that's time zone. Time zones exist because of trains, and
Yes.
so that's not related.
Once we started to globalize and all of that, we realized we needed to actually figure out what the hell was gonna, when exactly did it become later in the day as we moved, right, across the country and across the world. But yeah, no, this all is based on harvest stuff. But what we've done is it's been going on for so long that we've also kind of started to use it for other reasons. There are other things that are based on it, and it's kind of the unfortunate thing about like institutionalized bullshit, right? Is that like eventually so many things kind of become so attached to it, kind of tangentially, that getting rid of it is not as easy of a task as of us saying, we maybe we shouldn't do this anymore. And where this is something kind of minorly controversial when we talk about daylight savings time, but think about that on a larger scale sometime.
Yeah, I agree. And then you got to consider there are those states where like we just don't have it. Hi,
Hmm.
Arizona, right? Let's
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
and
like
then
some people
counties
have
and
already.
yeah.
But then Arizona then has to deal with a bunch of bullshit, because if you live in Arizona and you're talking about what time it is, and people ask you things like, okay, if I need to call you back, because again, we live in a global like market now,
Yeah.
like, so people have to deal with that. It becomes a pain in the ass to deal with people from Arizona if you work in any type of like retail situation and stuff. Like, I know Amtrak has like fucking nightmare scenarios where daylight savings time on this end is pretty easy, because basically they just like park the train for an hour or whatever it is to catch back up to the actual time. But not the case on going the other way. When they lose an hour, they have to actually like reset schedules and all that shit. And then imagine having to do all of that, and then also anytime a train goes anywhere close to Arizona, it becomes a whole other thing, right?
Yeah. It's an interesting thing. It's something that we've talked about on the show before. probably by the nature of we record on Sundays, so it's definitely something that we're thinking about when it occurs and a microphone is placed in front of us. But I will remember, and this is more related to time zones and the falling back of everything, when I live on the East Coast, so I'm one of the first places where, like, sun rises on the Eastern time zone, and you lived at, like, the last stretch of land before the day would end in the Eastern time zone, and that was always bananas to me. Like,
yeah, no, I mean, it was crazy because the other big thing that's happened over the last couple of weeks is I did go home and visit the old East Coast, right? I went to the old homestead, and I, brought some family with me that had not ever been that far east before, and they were just like, "Why is it dark at 5 o'clock at night here?" And I'm just like, okay, we have to talk about how some of this shit works sometimes. But yeah, the way that the way that it would get like super sunny for you early in the morning, but still be dark for me, but we would still both be at 7 o'clock, right?
Yeah.
When we used to record that way, and then the other way around, we would record at night sometimes, and I'd be talking about a beautiful sunlight day outside, and you'd just be like, "It has been dark for years."
I do not even remember light. It has been dark.
I don't remember the sun. Yeah, no, time is like a construct, right? And it is a pretty bullshit one the more and more that you think about it, but it's one of those things that we all have to adhere to. It's the same thing with like taxes and driving laws. Like, at the end of the day, we could do a lot of damage if we just decided that we didn't believe in any of that shit.
Off the top of your head, can you think of any state that doesn't have the right turn on red law? Because I know they're out there, and I'm always nervous. As somebody who travels...
As in, like, you're allowed to right turn on red?
Yeah. Like,
any state that doesn't allow that? Is that what you're asking?
I know there's like 2 states that don't allow it.
So I will say this. I can't think of any state that doesn't allow it, but out here in Utah, I can only speak anecdotally, but I see more no turn on red signs posted than I ever have driving around Ohio or Rhode Island, and New England and Midwest.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I know that it's one of those situations where, like, whenever I'm in a different state, I'm like, all right, should I go right on red? Like, or is that going to get me in trouble right now?
Well, and at some point you also, like, it starts to kind of form a Venn diagram with like blue laws of just like what bullshit is not allowed in this state because this state made a law 60 years ago and they've never revisited it, but no one else in this country does it that way, so the state doesn't enforce it, right? Like, then you get into that whole sort of shit.
It's weird. It's all weird. I mean, everything is a construct, and there is no bigger argument against us living in a simulation than the fact that the rules are not universal across the entire program.
Yeah, we as humans still have to all put our heads together at some point and figure shit out, right? Like this like, and we've started to slowly get a taste over the last few years of what happens when that doesn't always work.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it really does start to break your brain a bit. I mean, for anybody out there that maybe is not as tuned into the political stuff as you and I are, and we're not even as tuned in as some other people are, right? There's definitely people more than us, but like for anybody out there that doesn't really understand why we get into this shit, or anybody not in this country that is just like, I mean, I know things are bad, but are they that bad? Like, you have to understand the shit that goes on in this country has been going on in this country for the last couple of years. The implications of it go far beyond just like day to day. Oh no, like I've lost the ability to go to my doctor for this kind of medicine. Like, yeah, those kinds of laws are being put in place. But when we talk about how that's like a sign of worse and worse shit, it's because at some point you find yourself in this philosophical like conundrum of just like, if they're willing to go this far, how much of reality that we've based on just trusting one another to be, human beings, are they willing to throw out the window?
Well put. A terribly scary thing. I mean, this episode is called Jill Biden Didn't Ruin Sejohn's Birthday. And that
Despite her best efforts.
Despite her best, that's very true. Come to find out, because she was at the Houston Astros, Philadelphia Phillies game. She was at one of the World Series games.
Yeah, I was going to say the World Series game.
Yeah.
They aren't just playing just for fun.
Well, they're over.
Right?
It's over. Congratulations to the Houston Astros, winning in the latest ever played World Series game, happening on November 5th, because of a rain delay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't they have Game 3? Weren't they not doing so hot? I'm pretty sure that it was the only game of the series I watched, and if I remember correctly, I walked away when the score was 7-0, the Phillies.
Okay, so here's like the really crazy thing about it, right? So that thing occurs, and then the next game is a no-hitter for the Astros. Like, the whole thing was up and down, all about the marketability and the television of it all. And honestly, I feel like, and this is I've had sports conspiracy theories my entire life, and one of them is they want any series to go on as long as possible because it is more ad dollars in their pocket. It's more money for those stadiums from people who are there buying beer and snacks and everything like that. Parking's a huge deal at most of these stadiums.
Well, not to
The
mention
tickets
all of the pre-planning,
themselves, yeah.
right? All of the pre-planning has to go in with the assumption this could go for this long. So there's a lot of money spent to move TV schedules around, get people in the right place, and like set up a hotel rooms for that long. All of that shit. That if it's over in 3 games out of the 7, that's wasted money.
It would always
Money
be
that
4
didn't go
games, just so you
anywhere.
know
Right.
that. It's a best of
Well,
4.
right, but right, but that idea being, no, this is super baseball we're talking about, Devin.
Oh, right. Oh,
This is the most hypothetical of hypotheticals, all right?
it's the Jeopardy Tournament of Champions, which is a winner of 3, best of 7, which is crazy to me. We're going to talk about the changes to the Tournament of Champions this year, because why not?
But yeah,
super
so
baseball.
but all of that money is like pre-spent with the idea being that a lot of that ain't coming back if it doesn't get used, and so it's better on the books if that shit gets used, right? So as you're saying, it is better for anyone but the fans and the players themselves. It's actually better the longer that the series goes, right?
Right. That's just a fact. For the people who are making the most money, and considering that, like, ball players and professional athletes make a shit ton of money, but that's nothing compared to what the owners are walking away with, especially the owners of championship teams, right?
Right.
Even the second place of the entire league, there's no slouch. They get to campaign on that. They were the, league champion, and that'll be shirts going forward for the entire year. And it allows them to raise ticket prices between 10 to 25% based on
the
that.
drama.
Yeah,
The
and
drama going
yeah.
forward of can they make up for the losing season?
Yeah.
That they can ride on. I mean, that's what the Red Sox have run on for 100 and some odd years.
The Cubbies, right? Think about the Cubs, right?
Oh man,
it's this just insane thing that is all about the machine. And it was always known that there was the chance that this World Series could have the latest game played in World Series history, because should it go to Game 7, it will go until November 5th. That was just a known fact. And then Tuesday's game was rain delayed because, like, it was an insane storm. That whole insane storm thing that just swept through the Midwest this week.
Yeah.
It was affected by that. So no game, that's what's going to happen. Well, no, they were in Philadelphia, so that it wasn't even the Midwest thing. It was just crazy weather in Philadelphia for that game. So there's your thing. So they get delayed so that no matter what, they're going to that November 5th. And the fact that it ended yesterday in 6 games instead of going to the 7th, I wasn't hyper surprised, is what I'm going to say. I don't want to go as far as saying Black Sox Scandal 2, especially because it'd be more like Black Sox Scandal 275. That can't possibly be true. There haven't been that many World Series. I'm just saying it's not the first time I would think there was collusion and, like, decisions made behind closed doors about who's going to win this game.
I can't get the look. I am not gonna pull the rug out from you on this conspiracy because I have some of my own, especially if we want to talk sports, right? Like, I will never be able to rectify in my head how the year after 9/11, the Eagles and the Patriots are the 2 teams that make it to the Super Bowl, right? Like that will forever be something that just sticks in my mind. It is like talking about JFK and, like, the second shooter theory. Is like I have no evidence of it. I'm not gonna sit around and push it on anybody. By all accounts, it is bullshit. So obviously I don't quote unquote believe it, but that doesn't mean that my brain doesn't just hold on to that information and won't let go of it, right?
I mean, look at 2006, and the Patriots don't win a game all season and then suddenly forget how to play football against the New York Giants of all teams. Like,
there's definitely many a time where an eyebrow gets raised when it comes to sports and wins, and this feels a little too convenient for Procter and Gamble and nobody else.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about bread and circus, and professional sports are the circus of the day, right?
Yeah.
I mean, especially look at TBS and the fact that their schedule is primarily baseball and other sporting events when it isn't reruns of Family Guy, Big Bang Theory, or Friends.
Sure. Let me bring the other foot down and say.
Oh, bring it down, please. Yes.
We are not that. While I have said I am not going to sit here and shit all over the idea that you believe this stuff, I am not going to sit here and spout it any longer because we are not a conspiracy podcast.
Yeah, that's true. It's just. He's right. I don't want to give any truth to anything that I've said, but it's just that moment where you're like, well, that's mighty convenient, isn't it? Feels convenient. Especially once the World Series starts, the 7 days that are supposed to have a game on them, like, scheduling changes on the TV networks. They let you know that the World Series is going to be played at this time on this channel. So that you know that, like, usually I'd be watching Masked Singer, but, baseball's happening. Mm-hmm. And they did not plan out today's schedule as if there was going to be a World Series game played today.
Right.
Which, wouldn't you kind of want to get on that just in case so that, like, everybody knows and is on the same page? That's just coincidental evidence. It's not corroborating evidence, but it's just one of those situations that I think about. I don't know how we got on baseball.
We were talking about all sorts of shit.
We're talking about Jill Biden. Jill Biden not ruining Sejohn's birthday is
because she was at a baseball game.
Well, no, yeah, she was at a baseball game. She was at a World Series game, and I saw Jill Biden, and I'm not really in the profession of looking at what first ladies look like, especially after the 4 years where, like, nobody knew what Donald Trump's wife looked like, right? We didn't see her for 4 years.
She just went into hiding. Came out at Christmas to show us, like, some creepy-ass Tim Burton Christmas pictures and then ran away again. Yeah.
Yeah, like it. So I'm just like, but, like, the woman I saw, so Sejohn was in town, right? He mentioned that. And the day that we had planned to see each other, Jill Biden had planned to come and visit and, like, perform speeches on the campus where I work. And then in the city where I work as well. So it was one of those situations where, like, we need to avoid the Bermuda Triangle of Jill Biden. I was able to say it on that Wednesday. I cannot get it out now while there's a microphone in front of me. There's too much pressure, it turns out.
Because if you said it, the government would come for you.
Yeah, right. But it was one of those situations where it's like, we know where all the speaking engagements are supposed to happen. If we don't want to wind up stuck in traffic, these are the points to avoid. And she was supposed to be away from where I work at 3 o'clock. And then, so I waited until 4:45 to leave, right? Knowing that it's the government. Of course it's going to be delayed, right? So I'm like, if I give them an hour and 45 minutes, it should be fine. I walk out to my car, start my car, and here comes the First Lady's motorcade. And I'm like, well, I guess I'm stuck behind this now.
I guess I'm part of this parade.
Walking with the motorcade was Jill Biden. So I actually did get to see her. And I didn't know that until I was watching the World Series. And I'm like, oh, she was really close to my car that day.
Oh, no.
But yeah, so we were able to find a place to meet up for drinks and to celebrate Sejohn's birthday. That was far away from all of her speaking engagements and locations where she was supposed to be, which was kind of nice. I was glad to do it. Doesn't mean that we still didn't. I mean,
at the end of the day, it has nothing to do with Jill Biden herself. It's just the idea that, like, we just had no desire to be involved in any mass grouping of any kind in the middle of Providence while we wanted to see each other for the first time in 4 years.
Yeah, 3 years. It was 3 years, which is crazy. It's still a long ass time, but
right.
But it is. We had seen each other in 2019, right around your birthday as well. So
just before the world went.
Just before I drove Will from the Boston airport to the New York airport in 2020. 3 weeks before the world went crazy. So I got to see Will and I got to see you right before the world went nuts. And then I've gotten to see you again. I don't know about Will. I don't know if I'll ever see Will again.
we one day,
yeah,
when maybe the bigger disease comes and they decide to just group everybody together for one last hurrah.
Oh, wow, that's a terrifying prospect. Knock on wood, even if you're just listening to what Sejohn said. But it was nice. It was nice it didn't happen. And then So that's one thing, right? The fact that Jill Biden had a potential to mess up CJ and I seeing each other for the first time in 3 years. But then the other thing is, we are dropping this episode the day before local elections. And as we've done before so many times, vote, take part in these local elections, especially as it looks like there's a pretty good chance the Democrats are going to lose their majority in Congress. And that's terrifying, right?
But they don't have to. I think that's the
Yeah.
important thing to say
Yes.
after that. A lot of people are saying those scary words right now, and I think the important thing for anyone out there that might send a bit more than a chill down your spine, shall we say, that doesn't have to be the case. It doesn't look that way because of inevitability. It looks that way because of a lot of prospective possibility, and that shit does not mean anything, as we now know over the last 5 years. So as long as you do the right thing, which, as Devin said, is get the fuck out there and vote, I think we're going to be okay.
Yeah. And, vote the way you feel, vote your passion. I know that might mean that there are some people out there voting for things like a woman's right to choose, which, that's your choice. I, for one, support that. I think it's terrifying that we now live in a country where Roe v. Wade has been overturned, and everything that has happened in the wake of that is just...
Well, and again, just to kind of hint to some of the stuff we were talking about earlier, just like, and the implications that has beyond things that are not as obvious right now. There's a lot of laws in this country that were kind of hinging on that just always being a right that people had. And now that's not the case because Congress never made it that way. Like, let's put blame where blame is. That the fact that they never solidified shit when they had the chance. Now it's all up in the air, and there's a lot of things attached to that as well.
Yeah. So if there's something right now about the world that you like, and you want to make sure that is protected, go vote for the people who support that way of life. Because let's also talk about the fact that the Supreme Court had 2 chances to overturn President Biden's whole thing about student loan relief, right? And they declined to overturn it both times, which is insane that happened, considering all of the puppet politics that were put into place during Trump's presidency. It's nice to see that people understand a good thing when a good thing is happening in that moment. And we want to make sure that we have good representation who are fighting for the rights that matter, right? If you're one of those people who listens to the Say Report and was very happy when our president was like, you know what's ridiculous? Marijuana being illegal. Let's decriminalize that. And you're like, yay? Make sure you keep the right people in power. Because if the wrong people wind up in power after Tuesday, there's a chance that that's going to get overturned.
Yeah, and I mean, even beyond that, if you want to see that go even further, because I, for one, am all about the idea of decriminalizing marijuana and making sure that people in this country that are incarcerated for stupid reasons are given the chance to get out of those situations. Like, we need to start working on all of that, but we also need to go further than that, right? And that's the thing is even if you felt like that was only a half measure, go out and vote for the people that will push that further.
We'll continue to finish that measure. Because he's not wrong. But voting is an important thing. And it's always nice sitting here at the Say Report every 2 years to remind you, please go out and vote.
Well, and it's easy for me for a lot of reasons. I mean, 35-year-old white male, but not least of which, right? But the other side of that is I also live in a state where Utah, I will give credit where credit is due, for a state that is not always known for being the most progressive. They've had mail-in voting for over a decade, and it is like a beloved system out here. So when all of the mail-in voting stuff was being questioned, you should have seen how fast people up here turn their nose at that shit, because it has been the bread and butter of elections out here. And so it's easy for me to also sit here and on this high horse and talk about all this because I sent in a mail-in vote last week, already. My shit's already on its way. So I've done my duty, and I want everybody else to do theirs too.
I thrill in the opportunity to go stand in my elementary school again. It really humbles me. Now that it's back to in voting,
if I had those kinds of connections, in my nostalgia here, maybe I'd be right there with you.
Oh yeah.
If I was back in Rhode Island and voting, you better believe I'd wait till that day, and I'd stand in line with everybody.
Especially because I'm one of those lucky people who has the day off. So that's the other thing. I know that it's difficult because they haven't made it one of these situations where
it should be a national holiday.
It should be a national holiday. So that you can go vote and that everybody has the opportunity to take part in their right as an American citizen to vote. But it's just that reminder, especially these are the ones that you really got to fight for and talk about, because these are the ones where like not everybody participates in the smaller local elections because it's not as national. There's no national stage with this.
Though I will say, like, I feel like over the last few years, especially, I think with a lot of the COVID stuff that happened, like people got a lot more interested in the immediate like jerks around them that were, you know, like running their day to day all of a sudden.
Yeah.
For good or for ill, you know, some of that was because there were people in power making good suggestions that maybe some people didn't agree with, and they started sniffing around. And but is there right? Like it's you like get involved in your local elections. No matter what you believe, I still want you to vote, right? Like that's how this country works. As much as I may hate the fact that there are stupid people around me that have the right to do that as well as I do, I have to admit that that's the way it's supposed to be, and I want it to be, right? Like,
he's right, and that's the best part about it is that he is right about this one. It's just a fact. So from the Say Report, please get out there and vote, right? And that's just our thought on that particular topic. Right? It's a show about everything. Sometimes we're going to talk about baseball. Sometimes we're going to talk about voting. Sometimes we're going to talk about what we should have talked about instead of me trying to shove a Halloween episode down your throats.
Halloween, an episode of a Halloween episode neither of us wanted to do. You're welcome, folks.
Totally my fault. I will take credit because that's my fault on that one. And I actually learned something as I sat alone sad on Halloween. And that's, I kind of let a Hocus Pocus 2 ruin the entire Halloween season for me. I watched it the first day that it was available, which I believe was September 29th. And just from there, I gave it so much power. And I brought that power to life with our episode. So just like a blanket apology from Devin Decker. Now on to the topic that we should have talked about, because while Sejohn was here, we also got to see our first movie together in, oh my God, was the last one The Interview?
Oh my God, I hope so. I like
it was
that
John
movie
Wick.
was...
We saw John Wick together at the
okay.
Dollar Theater.
Yeah.
And then we went to
theater,
Greg's.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a
John
good
Wick's
night.
a good one too, though. I will take John Wick as well as The Interview.
Yeah.
No, it's been a hot second, and I think that's the bigger story here. I want to make sure that we're clear about that before we get into Shazam.
Black Adam.
I knew it was Black Adam, but I heard Shazam coming out and couldn't stop it. Like I struggled to stop the name. That's gonna happen a lot today, folks. Because honestly, I'm gonna kind of hold it up as my Shazam movie going forward. But again, we'll get to there in a second, because the important bit is that we got to do something together that we have always talked about it being a huge staple of our relationship, and then we just haven't been able to do it for 3 years.
Yeah, we haven't.
So here we are.
Wait, was it? It might have been the Thracian War. No, it was definitely John Wick. I don't know why I keep trying to do it, but then like I remember when we saw Hercules, the Thracian Wars, otherwise known as just Hercules. And
yeah, just every time you call it by its
by its
name,
stupid subname.
I don't like
really.
I don't register. I can't register what that movie is. You say that, and I'm like, that sounds like an awesome movie that I don't remember seeing.
I know it's the Dwayne Johnson Hercules movie, which is excellent, and I can't wait till we get to a significant year on that film. We might have to just rip it out at the 10-year anniversary. I think so. With you.
I mean, because not least of which, because only you just now saying that it was like a Dwayne Johnson movie that I was like, oh, right. And then we did Black Adam, and that's great. But also, I never think of Dwayne Johnson when you first mention Hercules. I get there eventually, but every time we talk about this movie, the only character I really think about is Ian McShane.
Yeah, with good reason. I mean, that movie is all about the supporting cast.
That moment when he just stands there waiting for the arrows to kill him, like that look on his face of just like, please God, just do it now.
Let it happen. I'm done. That's a great flick. So I was also happy to go see another Dwayne Johnson movie with you. Yeah. So getting to see Black Adam, it was cool, and we also we got Dale to come out with us too. So it really had some old nostalgic going to the movie vibes, especially in the wake of. I mean, how many movies have you honestly seen since the COVID pandemic in theater?
Less than half a dozen.
Yeah.
I like it has to be less than 6 in the last 3 years. Yeah.
I mean, I think I saw Black Widow, Eternals, Spider-Man. Yeah, so I'm at exactly 6 with
Spider-Man,
everything.
Doctor Strange,
Doctor
this. I
Strange and
mean,
then Black
it
Adam.
might be a little over 6. I'd have to go back and look, but it's not been many.
Yeah, it
Like
certainly
it's
hasn't.
when for somebody that used to go a dozen times a year, like the fact that I can't even think of a dozen that I've done in 3 years is something,
I would see a movie a week. Like that was
right?
my low hanging goal, was to see 52 new movies in theater. So that
Yeah,
even to break that down to 6 in the last 2 years, that's crazy to me.
right, right.
But then Black Adam, I mean, first of all, we have an episode. You can go listen to it. It's out there. It's called the Shazam Report, and it's because I thought that Shazam was a sham. And I refused to call it Shazam. I was going to
Yeah,
say
so
Shazam. So
let's do a quick check-in about this actually, because I'm
yeah,
curious where we stand now, and with everything that's gone on over the last few years. Um, I feel like where we were at, but more importantly, where I think we are now, is that like I liked that movie clearly more than you did, but I don't think either of us really felt it was a strong experience.
yeah, that's an
Okay.
understatement on that movie.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. Because I have elements of Shazam that I remember and I love, but I still cannot get past the fact that it felt like it was three different movies slammed into one, right? Like at least two, because whatever Mark Strong and his whole story is in
oh
that
my
movie
god,
is a completely different film than everything going on with Billy,
when
right?
he kills that redheaded woman,
Yeah, I
I
mean,
like.
like the car accident and all of that shit. Like it was like watching like a Magneto origin story, and I was like all on board for it. But then all of a sudden, it cuts to just Zach Levy in too tight of pants. Like, what is going on?
Yeah. I mean, my favorite character in that movie is Freddy, his little friend,
His
because
buddy,
it
his
was,
brother. I mean,
yeah, his foster brother. I mean,
right?
A, because he was in the Me, Myself, and I show with John Larroquette, him as the younger version. He voiced Dewey. I can't think of his name. Oh, Bobby Moynihan. I squealed out loud when Bobby Moynihan showed up in something over the last couple of weeks, which I hope we can talk about later on in the episode. I loved him in that show as the young, like playing the 8-year-old version of this character. So then to
Yeah.
see him in something else, I'm like, great, I'm glad that this kid is getting more work. And then it turns out that he's like the emotional heart of that movie, and Billy Batson's just kind of a dick.
Yeah,
Like,
Billy's not great. It's really weird because every time I see Billy used, and I think this is what you're getting at, is he is often used as that, right? The innocent, naive heart of the team, right? Like, and it's because he is a child in this like superpowered body versus somebody like Clark Kent who it's Superman, but I think you could call him hardened, right? Like I know
oh
he's
yeah,
standing in the same room as Batman, and that's a hard conversation to have. But comparing power sets and who has kind of the experiences to back up where they're at, like Billy is always kind of coming from that angle of being the sweet, like loving one. And in this movie, they give all of that to his brother, and Billy is just left being kind of this just like troubled teen. Like I think they were trying to put like a darkness in him that just like that's not the point of him.
that
But what's
really
weird.
reflects the DCEU and how they want to do every character. Like,
But what's crazy is, and this is part of this is just because of who Zach Levy is. But when Levy's playing that character, the bigger version of him, we also noted this at the time, doesn't quite jive with the way that Billy is when he's not him, right? Like
no,
he's they're not acting. And I think this this is the comparison we should always make if we aren't always. It is watching 17 again, right? And
mm-hmm.
seeing the way that Zac Efron and Matthew Perry like the way that Zac Efron is able to throw some Matthew Perry mannerisms into his acting throughout the rest of that movie, where they feel like they are the same person, right? There's just so much going on that makes you feel like they are the same guy, versus something like this where it just never feels like they're the same character. Because I think Zach Levy does have a lot of that like joyfulness of Billy that just missing from the not big version of him.
I mean, and the weird thing is, I could totally see Billy being this like jaded, troubled teen. But then once he gets the Shazam powers, it'd be nice if some of the enthusiasm and actually being able to rise above where he saw himself in life bled back into the non-super powered version of the character.
Yeah,
Like if
yeah.
it brought, like, he's super enthusiastic as Zach Levy Shazam, but then he's still like, oh, my life is terrible. And it's like, then why are you not like that when you're Shazam? Why
Yeah.
why are you only like that when you're like teenage kid, right? Like
Well,
'cause-
and we actually had a really good
yeah.
kind of example of this with She-Hulk, and it's real. And part of that is because it's the same actress playing both both Jennifer and She-Hulk. But I mean, like the whole exploration of that about how she feels like she's the same person, but the way that this other one is treated is different, and then eventually they start acting and behaving differently. And it's like watching that and seeing that exploration of exactly that relationship between their two bodies is like never even considered in this, to the point where it just feels like they're just two separate people. Like yeah, like I love the idea of Billy as like unpowered Billy learning to be a better person without powers through having the powers as Shazam. And like you just don't get that,
You don't get it. And
the movie's just not interested in it.
yeah. Whereas and another problem that I have with that movie is it's the first movie, but all of his other foster siblings wind up with Shazam powers by the end of it. And then it feels like all of them have that happen to them. Like,
Yeah.
it's like one of those situations where, like, oh, cool, like, now we have these powers and we can fight against these things that are holding us back in the world. And, like, you can see, and it's the briefest of moments because they all become super-powered versions of themselves. And then you get, like, one brief scene where they're no longer super-powered, but, like, the overweight guy like is no longer upset about his weight, and Freddy's not upset about the fact that like he's wearing crutches on one of his legs, like he's just that he has leg braces, and it's just like, but Billy is still kind of just like, man, like
I guess this works. It's like, okay, calm the fuck
really
down.
it's a really odd choice, especially because you have what I think it's 5 other characters who it works with.
You said it earlier. You called it out. It's the DCEU problem of they wanted it to somehow feel dark or angsty, and that's just not what Billy Batson Shazam is. So
then
with
we
that
get
in mind,
well, the last thing that I have to say, because we just spent some time talking about the Shazam movie, before we saw Black Adam, what we talked about was what trailers are we going to see, and neither one of us considered that we would see a Shazam Fury of the Gods trailer. And it was a weird reminder of that first movie that was lingering in my mind before Black Adam started.
Well, and I think that's one of the big things is to consider everything that looking back on it. What, 4 years later, when Shazam was
2019? It released a week after Captain Marvel. Like, which is so crazy that there were technically 2 Captain Marvel movies in theater at the same time.
But so 3 years ago, right?
Yeah.
What has happened since then is the complete like falling apart of the DCEU, right?
Yeah.
And Shazam seems to be one of, if not the only real surviving piece, and by all accounts is coming out like I am still kind of wondering if that movie's never going to make it out. Like I'm wondering if this is going to go so far as like a week before release we find out that WB's like this is history making already, because the fact that this movie is coming out with everything that the plug has been pulled on all over the DCEU and WB and WB Discovery now and all that stuff, this is mystifying that this movie is that Shazam 2 is the thing that we are going to see more of.
The other mystifying thing about it is they had Fury of the Gods and they had Black Adam. Both of them were set to release this year. And when it came time to, like, Warner Brothers can only release 2 movies before the end of 2022. We literally cannot afford to release a 3rd movie or we're going to have to shutter our doors. We will go bankrupt if we release 3 movies in 2022, which is insane to me, right? Like, it's the craziest thing that they said in all of the craziness that has been happening with Warner Brothers Discovery. The one that they decided to release was Black Adam and Don't Bother Me, or whatever that movie was called.
Don't bother me.
The movie with Florence Pugh and
the Florence Pugh classic. Get the fuck away from me, Harry Styles. Also Shia LaBeouf, but he seemed to get the message much quicker than you.
Yeah. That movie, like those were the 2 that they went with, where if you're in such dire straits that you're saying we can only release 2 movies, at the end of this year. We literally can't afford to release a third movie. Shazam! Fury of the Gods seems like the one you go with, right? Like, why?
No, man. Here's why. Staring down the barrel of those two movies as a fan, I'll tell you which one I'm happy they went with.
Oh,
right?
and again, I was right there with you. This is before I even saw Black Adam. I was like, good that they went with Black Adam, because holy shit.
And so to that point, right, I think what it came down to give a little bit more nuance, not much more because you hit the nail on the head, but a little bit more nuance to the whole, if we put 3 movies out, we're screwed. It's more, if we put 3 movies out and all 3 of them tank, we're fucked. If we put 2 out and they tank, we can survive. Ideally, we put 2 out and they don't tank. Right. And I think that's really more what the conversation was. And so with just that little added bit of information there, you kind of can see why they go with this. Right.
Yeah.
Of the 2 movies that are more likely to make some money back on the front end right now, nothing is making money right now. Right. Unless you're fucking Tom Cruise going back to an airplane, like you're not putting money in the bank. And so like they're coming at it looking at that of like, we're pretty much guaranteed to just not make this cash. So what can we do to mitigate that? Limit ourselves to the losses for right now until we can figure out what the fuck is going on with the market. And then the one that they go with is, I mean, The Rock has been championing this movie for over a decade, right? Like, so like you already have this really avid fan base that is willing to see this to the end, and people have loved him being this adamant about this. It is good press, so that you have that whole built-in story to it. Also, from what we now know after seeing it, there's not much going on that promises fuck all about anything else in the quote-unquote universe. It doesn't tie itself to too much specifically. There's a couple of things you could point to, but honestly, if I had never seen the first Shazam, if I had never seen another DC movie, this movie still would have made sense to me. It doesn't have the MCU problem.
It's
right?
a fantastic standalone film. Before we go any further, that needs to be said.
Right. But now think about this in terms of Shazam. Shazam is already kind of riding rough. It doesn't have an avid fan base. There are definitely people that enjoy that movie, but it's not like Zack Snyder cut level of like, we need to see this film shit online, right? Like that's just not happening. And then on top of that, it is tied so heavily to this whole thing that you've just killed this entire franchise. What is Shazam? What is he connected to anymore? What does he represent? Is he still in the same universe?
He was only tangentially connected at best.
Exactly.
Like that's...
So like there's all of this stuff that is tied up in Shazam that you just don't have to worry about with this Black Adam movie. Plus, it's got The Rock in it. Like throw it out there, right?
And oh my god, and the Justice Society of America. Though I think they're just the Justice Society.
I mean, like, I'll be honest. I told a couple of people Pierce Brosnan was in this movie, and they had no idea, and that was what piqued their interest. Of all fucking people to be in a Dwayne Johnson action movie, Pierce Brosnan is in it. I was like, yeah, he's actually pretty awesome. Yeah. I mean, I don't know why that would be a surprise to anybody, but...
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was Remington Steele, and then he was James Bond. Yeah, no, he's terrible in an action film, though.
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, so like, but knowing all that, right? Like, is what Shazam is bringing to the table? Oh God, that is what Black Adam is bringing to the table over Shazam 2.
You know what it also says to me, and this is all conjecture. I could be completely wrong. Black Adam's probably not making an appearance in Shazam: Fury of the Gods as it is currently made, right? That doesn't mean that there's not going to be reshoots or something like that. But if Black Adam was like the villain in Shazam, then why wouldn't they have bet their money on Black Adam and Shazam? Because then, you have those people who have to go see both, and you kind of get to have your Infinity War Endgame moment, but across 2 months.
But you see, that doesn't give them an Oscar contender.
True,
and that's what the Olivia Wilde "Come Fly with Me," whatever that one was.
I don't know the name of it, and I'm enjoying more. The craziest thing about it is
we'll look it up at the end. We'll be nice and look it up at the end, but
it released on HBO Max this weekend, so it is also a movie that both of us could have watched, and neither one of us was like, this is a priority, because it wasn't a priority.
Out of respect for Florence Pugh and Chris Pine, but more Florence Pugh, I am not watching that film until this shit settles. I will obviously not like ignore it because she did work, and like I don't want to ignore work she did, but I feel like waiting until all of the dust settles on this thing and when you figure out exactly what the hell went on, then I think I can watch it with a little less guilt. But right
Yeah.
now watching it just feels exploitive.
True, very true. It's just one of those situations where like we don't know the name of this movie clearly, and I got 2 emails about it being available on HBO Max. I don't know what your email settings are like.
Walk
Yeah.
This Way? No, that's not it.
Nope.
We'll get it. We'll get it. But yeah, but that doesn't give them an Oscar contender, right? So
True.
they need to have that as well as their big action movie, and they go with this. I will give you a fancy dollar, the fanciest
Ooh.
dollar I've got. If you could tell me the one WB headed film that has acknowledged Black Adam outside of Black Adam,
Oof.
I will even be nice and say this. It ain't in the DCEU, but they still acknowledged it in the DCEU.
Uh, I I don't know. I honestly could not tell you. And that
League of Super Pets.
Oh my god! I didn't watch that
I-
movie yet. I know that's on HBO Max
It's
too.
so, oh my God. Okay. You have to watch it so that we
I
can
will
talk
watch
about
it.
it.
I will do it. I can put that on the docket, no problem.
But I look, this isn't going to surprise you, which is why I'm just going to say this. In my opinion, it is the best Justice League movie they've put out in a long time.
It's got Kevin Hart in it. Of course, it's the best Justice League movie they've put out in a long
And
time.
Dwayne Johnson.
Woo!
Yeah. So
I watched Underdog with you. I know your tastes, Sejohn.
I had such a good time with that movie, but spoilers for one of the stingers on it, but there is some Black Adam stuff that happens, and it's adorable. Like it acknowledges all of this, and it was my first realization of like, oh man, Black Adam is like being accepted outside of more than just Dwayne Johnson's head. Like, all right, let's do this. Like, it made me excited to see Black Adam. So, like, good on them for that marketing ploy there. But yeah, it's weird though that is the only freaking thing that we would like. He's not attached to fuck all anything else anywhere. Even though we do get the backstory of him in this movie. I guess we're getting into
Yeah,
Black
so
Adam.
spoilers before we go any further. We are going to talk about Black Adam. It's been out for at least 2 weeks. I think we saw it the third week it was available. I don't know. It's out there. It'll probably be on HBO Max. Watch it. Anything that we're going to say about this movie, I don't think is going to ruin the overall experience that is watching Black Adam. And that is the largest bit of praise that I can heap upon the film.
Yeah, I would say for good or for ill, that's true. Like
Yeah,
it's
true.
the kind of
That's-
movie where you can know everything going in and you're still going to enjoy yourself with it because it looks pretty. Like that's the level at which I engaged with this film. Let me put it that way.
It's fair.
But at that level, enjoyed the hell out of it, right? Like my time watching Black Adam was well spent, right? We also didn't tell the whole story about what we went to go see this, which was literally 9 o'clock at night. I had to go to bed because at 4 a.m. I had to wake up to get on a plane to come home, and that's when Devin goes, "We should go see Black Adam," right? And without getting into too many nitty gritty details, but at the behest of everyone at the table, eventually I acquiesced to this plan. And so we went to go see Black Adam. That it was like at almost 10 o'clock at night, so it played past midnight. Dev got me back to the place in Providence at 1, and then I had to wake up 3 hours later and get onto a plane. And it turned out to be the travel day from hell for every reason but that.
Well, I will say this. Your biggest mistake was going to the bathroom after I had introduced the plan, because then everybody left at the table was like, how are we going to make this happen? We have until he finishes pissing to figure out how we're going to make this movie happen.
Luckily,
was
we've
some
been drinking
collusion.
a lot, so it was a big piss.
Yeah, he hadn't gone. That was his seal breaking moment. And honestly, if he had come back from the bathroom and been like, I can't go see a movie or I'll piss myself, that was like the only way he could have won. But yeah, there was definitely collusion going on there, Ruxin. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. So that's how we went into this film, right? And so with all of that, right? Like I still feel like it was well spent. All of that, all of my energy dedicated to it that night was like perfect. We went through Taco Bell at some point. You got a kid to say your name.
Oh my god, yeah, that was crazy. That kid, I ruined the rest of the night for everyone working at Taco Bell by saying, I have an order for Devon Decker. And then, like, one kid who was not working the window, but, like, just heard it, was like, that's my catchphrase for the night.
That's gonna be my catchphrase for the rest of the week. Everybody working with me this week is gonna be pissed off. Oh man, yeah. So we had a hell of a like. So we always talk about the idea that taking these kinds of movies in, taking any movie in, it always comes with the context, right? And this is the context in which we are going to this film. We are walking into this movie theater now to go watch this movie, and it was a blast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really was this blast. It was one of those situations where as soon as Black Adam's origins are tied so directly to the origins of the DCEU Shazam, to the fact that the Wizard, played by Jimon Housso, shows up again in Black Adam, I'm just like, but I can't even begin to reconcile the fact that these two movies exist in the same world.
I
Like,
know,
it just
yeah.
doesn't
So
feel
that's what I was
that
saying
way.
before
Like,
is like we know that, right? Like we're
yeah.
watching this and the wizard shows up and we're just like, oh, cool. Like it's the same wizard that gave Shazam his powers. Oh, but if they're giving him the powers, what happens? And then you see the origin story, and obviously, like he fucks up and they try and revoke his powers. So that's the story there. It's why it allows for Shazam all those years later to have its story. But like, so it resolves itself almost instantly. They introduce this connection to the universe, and then that's it. You're pretty much told we're not coming back to this.
Yeah. And then the other connective tissue, which is honestly for me the biggest wrinkle of this film, and I'm still not happy or like content about it at all.
I'm wondering where what your feelings are on this. So
It's the Amanda Waller of it all.
I know the big connective tissue that they have decided to truly hold on to in all of this, because now we're talking about Suicide Squad. She has shown up in Batman, Superman. Like she is everywhere, right? Suicide Squad, both of them, right?
Yep,
Like
she's in
there.
both Suicide Squads, which is where
So
she should be. Because Task Force X in the comics is the Suicide Squad, which she's like the direct head of.
Yeah,
And
in a weird way though, like she's kind of like
it's so strange.
I'm trying to I'm trying to make sure that what I'm about to say is not going to be like insanely offensive in some way, and I don't think it is. But like they're trying to use her as like the anti Nick Fury, right? Like the idea being that she's going to be this like connective behind the scenes force. Only unlike Nick Fury, where we are constantly reminded that he's doing this for all the right reasons, we are never given like all of Amanda's like info, right? So like she could be a good guy, she could be a bad guy. We don't know what's happening. And like
Offensive or not, that's what everybody is referring her to.
Yeah,
Everybody is saying they're using her like Nick Fury, and it almost feels like they don't understand the differences between the two characters.
Well, and I'm not even opposed to using her in that way. It's just that shoehorning her in places is maybe not the best way to represent this character. And I think that's where I'm worried that it starts to get really kind of dodgy talking about this. Because like I feel like more Amanda Waller in the verse work is a great like directive. I feel like the ways in which they're going about it is not working. And none is more obvious than this weird ass moment at the beginning of this movie where she just appears via telecom to Hawkman, right?
Well, because if she is able to like call the Justice Society, why does she need to use the Suicide Squad? And then this is the biggest spoiler. Tune out for like 30 seconds if you don't want a big thing spoiled. And then at the end of the movie, she has access to Superman. Like she's able to call Superman and be like, "Go deal with this guy." And it's like,
Yeah.
What?
And so I will say that from a it's really hard because I'm trying to pull all of these biases apart because I love Amanda Waller in the comics.
She's a fantastic character. I will admit that straight up.
And the idea is supposed to be that she has her superpower, because everybody has a superpower even if they're human in the DC universe. Like there's always something that somebody is like good at no matter what. And her big thing is that she always has something on you.
Yeah.
Everybody she meets, she has a file of something stored away somewhere that she can dangle over you and make you dance. That is her ability. And so the idea being that she even has that over somebody like Superman, love it. I think that's fucking fantastic. But I think to your point, all of the stuff we've seen of this Amanda Waller up till now has been very low key. Pulling out the big guns, like I have something on Superman to go make him deal with this, is like it's jumping to the nuclear option. It's insane.
Well, it's all.
Without any context as to like how she's gotten to this point. Because like, yeah, I mean, this is a woman that we watched get bashed on the back of the head by one of her fucking nerdy techs, and suddenly we're supposed to believe that she has the ability to force Superman's hand. Like, what?
This is a woman who said the Suicide Squad are on their own to deal with Starro, but apparently she could have been like, "Hey, Superman, this is happening. A mind control alien is happening."
And then, like, the nerd in me wants to be like, well, if they send Superman, what happens if Starro got a hold of him? She was trying to protect us by not doing like there's
that's
ways to
because
defend
you've
that
read
shit.
and seen that story before.
No, I mean, like, but it's not a hard conclusion to jump to of
True.
like you don't send in the most powerful thing that could then get taken over by Starro, right?
Right.
You send in the B team and see if they can pull
But
it off first.
Superman also can't get taken over by the Enchantress, though he would be weak because she's magic. But then to have the B team, I mean the C team, really. Let's talk about what the Suicide Squad honestly is.
Eventually, this all devolves though into the same kind of shit that kids used to talk about like, way back
true.
in the day, where they're like, "Oh, in this Batman movie, why doesn't Superman just show up and do this if they're such good friends?" And it's like, at some point, like, I'm not here to see an Avengers movie. I want to watch just Iron Man.
At some point, we all agreed to take care of our own followers of Thor.
Well, and
So
you know,
if,
and some people have this like built-in like line, right? With Spider-Man, you talk about how no, he's the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. He takes care of this area. Daredevil the same way. Like Hell's Kitchen is his haunt, right? Like,
Right.
and you know that.
New York is pretty much in good hands. Is basically what you need to understand.
And also we've definitely seen in the last 5 films with Spider-Man in it, he goes for much further beyond New York ever. But
Yeah.
all the time. I mean, but like this idea being that you can't, at what point can you kind of say you can't have those conversations? Like, I don't want to say that. I don't think it's fair to say that. But also at the same time, at some point you gotta stop asking that question if you're gonna want to enjoy anything. Like, why doesn't Superman always show up should be the question if you're gonna keep going down that path, right?
Right, and I get it. I understand that he's not. I mean, that's why they killed him, I think, so early on. And then they're like, yeah, but for Justice League, you can't have Superman there. You need to have him in this movie. We got to bring him right back to life. We don't get to see a world without Superman, except for like half of a movie. Now, maybe half of that movie is going to be 2 hours eventually down the line, but it's weird that we never got to see the world without that element in it.
Yeah.
It's a little strange, because then it would make sense why Amanda Waller is like, I don't want to use him. We have other options that have proven themselves. But I think the last thing for the Amanda Waller of it all is also the fact that Amelia Harcourt shows up in her service in this movie, which then makes me wonder, where the fuck does Peacemaker fit into everything? Because the events of Peacemaker, at the end of it, they expose Task Force X and everything that Amanda Waller is doing. So then are we supposed to believe that even being exposed and like whistleblown on, the response to that is, well, you did a pretty good job with just criminals. Why don't we give you Superman? You can play with him too.
Yeah, well, and so there is this idea of what happens when suddenly she becomes not just government sanctioned but publicly sanctioned, right?
Yeah.
Is and that whole aspect. I mean, it's at least an interesting hook,
and
right?
I'm excited, and I hope that it gets explored, especially now that James Gunn is going to be in charge of everything. If there is going to be a second season of Peacemaker, what a wonderful stage to deeply explore. You know, he served her goals in the Suicide Squad, and then he learned very quickly how, like, she is really only out for whatever Amanda Waller wants. She is not thinking about other people in the guise of this. But if then he sees a world celebrating her, even after they expose everything that she was doing, and then has to watch as Amelia goes back to work directly under her, despite the fact that her and Economos were like sent to basically be on Peacemaker patrol as punishment. Like, that could be a really interesting exploration of all this stuff that's happening, and I would be fine with that filling in the, like, gaps in the storytelling. That would
Yeah.
make me feel really good. I need to temper my expectations because it's probably not going to happen, but it is one of those situations where I want to see that journey where Amanda Waller is like, I'm just going to call Hawkman and he's going to take my call.
Yeah, yeah,
And
it's just
like,
wild because she shows up. But the other side of that is that we're also kind of given the impression that this is not the first time this has happened,
mm-hmm,
that they have an almost working relationship. There's just a lot implied in that scene, like a lot implied in that scene all of a sudden. And that's kind of the biggest sin of this movie is it moves at a click. Like it
yeah,
really does. Like it takes off and it just goes. And that's probably in its best interest because it never gets bogged down in over explaining anything. There's not these huge overly emotional moments, like the death of Mr. Kent, right? In Man of Steel, when like that whole just 20-minute sequence of him and the fucking dog or whatever the hell it is, and
the
it felt like it was an
stupidest scene
hour.
in that movie. I just like
Right,
what I
but like you don't
constantly cite, but continue. Sorry.
no, so it's getting away from a lot of the stuff that people have really been calling DC out for recently, right? Like is getting caught up in that shit and overblowing this and turning everything into a fucking space opera or whatever nonsense. Like it just feels it feels like it is responding to a lot of that criticism. So like it's good that it makes these decisions, but because of that, it never quite like it never quite develops itself too much further than what you're seeing on screen. Like in the grand scheme of things, we are talking about stuff we'd love to see, but that's because they didn't give us anything else to think about, right? Like we don't really know much beyond the world of what we see on beyond the borders of the screen of this film.
Yeah, that's true. And then
Like,
I
what is
also
Hawkman's whole thing? Apparently, he's been running the JSA for a while, and like they've been going on. What does that look like? Like him
because
and
Dr.
Doctor
Fate
Fate
has stepped
and
away. And the fact that they introduced two new members to the JSA, one's a legacy who apparently has the same powers as his uncle, and the other one is the only person who gets anywhere close to having that Jonathan Kent scene where she's like, yeah, no, I was experimented on and had nanobots injected into my body. And you're like, oh my God, it's going to get real maudlin. It's going to get over dramatic right now. And then she's like, but whatever. Moving on.
yeah, but she's like, but what you gonna do
And I'm
anyway?
just like, oh my God,
Okay.
that really felt like that was the moment where I'm just like, that is addressing criticism right there.
Yeah,
The
I
fact
mean,
that we
but
didn't
and
pause for that.
and so I think though I think you'd definitely be forgiven and perhaps correct for saying that there's definitely overcorrection in
Oh,
in
yeah.
that regard because then the movie becomes I mean it is the definition of a popcorn film like there's just so many beautiful moments and fun moments to be watching but there's a lot of this movie that you don't have to like internalize to figure out what's going on, right? Like you pretty much are told what's going to happen. It happens. It happened.
Yep.
Like it's like that's this movie.
So here's the thing.
The only curveball you get is that there is a bit of a false ending at one point in this movie, and then there's still 30 minutes left.
Yeah. And if you're a fan of Young Rock, there's a lovely payoff because one of the Young Rocks plays a Young Rock in the movie. I loved that moment. That was one of my favorite bits. That's why Dale and I were yelling at that one moment because
I mean,
nobody watching Young Rock.
I contextually put two and two together.
Yeah, I know you are. You're good like that, but I'm making sure other people understand it. It's one of those, and here's the thing: whenever Dale and I go see a movie together, and it hasn't been a lot, but like thinking about something like Thor: Love and Thunder, right? That was a movie that like I didn't know how my parents would feel about it, so it was. I don't know. Like I wasn't pushing them to watch it until we just watched it yesterday, and that's because Wakanda Forever is coming out, and I got my mother tickets to go see that as part of her birthday gift because she liked the first one so much. So I don't want her to wait on that one until it's available and have. I mean, the movie itself has spoiled what that movie's going to be. The marketing has just taken this whole, like, decision to, oh no, we need to address the lack of Chadwick Boseman in our marketing. And gone a completely different direction from what it was when that movie was first announced. And I don't know if for good or for ill on that. I will find out when I see the movie. It seems like it was a reaction, though, to the critic screening of that film. Is what I am going to say.
I am not dialing into any of that shit. I'm trying to make sure that I stay as far away from it because and we could talk more about this
Yeah.
when we're not
Once,
trying to depart Shazam, but or
yeah.
Black Adam.
Black Adam.
But but my stepping away from social media has begun, and one of my first points of contention was I wanted to know nothing about anybody else's opinion on on Black
On
Panther.
Black Panther, I agree on that one, and I'm doing it. My only point of reference for that is that after the movie came out, and it seemed like, and like big publications were like, people are mixed about this movie. Hasbro stealth releasing the Black Panther figure for the Marvel Legends line. Like,
Yeah.
it was just suddenly posted on Hasbro Pulse. It didn't have some sort of reveal on TikTok or Instagram. It didn't have, like, one of the Marvel Legends showcases. They just put it up. And it's not even a pre-order. You order it today, you'll probably get it tomorrow. And it's just like, that seems weird. That seems really strange. And they also did it with the Riri Williams Ironheart figure. Like,
Yeah.
both of them were just like, you can just buy this. And that happened in the wake of it. So it makes me a little bit nervous. But yeah, so we finally watched Thor Love and Thunder, had a lovely discussion with it, but I was a little hesitant to watch it with the parents because I didn't know if the jocularity of that film would translate to them. And my mother actually is like, I like how it was a parody of what Thor usually is. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Fuck yeah.
And I'm like, good, because I feel like that was kind of the point.
That is like
yeah.
like that is exactly how I view that movie put to words. I just yeah.
It was great. But something like Black Adam, and this is after like we watched Wonder Woman 84 and it ruined Christmas. And we watched The Suicide Squad, and the best part of The Suicide Squad is when Amanda Waller came on screen, my mother going, "This fucking bitch again?" And it's like, yeah, she's kind of in charge of the whole group. And then the same thing with Peacemaker. She's like, all right, gotta have Amanda Waller. So I like that. I like that Amanda Waller is good connective tissue because, like, people who only drop in every now and then have that connection to the character. So I do have to give them credit for, like, using her the way they do because, like, my mother's not watching everything. But I will say, Black Adam is a movie that I am excited to watch with my parents when it is available to do so. Because I think that there's enough there for them to enjoy it.
One of the best things I think that it does is it also really like latches onto an old style of action filmmaking, action movie filmmaking, like from like the 90s that we don't do anymore. And for a lot of the good reasons we don't do it because it usually comes with a lot of tropes, and this movie kind of falls into these traps as well. So I will say that, but tropes of like real problems with displaying ethnicity on screen, and then like and the ways in which like areas are renamed and certain god characters are created. Like there's a lot of stuff that when we do this sort of shit in like Bern Fraser's The Mummy in 1999, like it's cool that it's okay, it's fun, it's a great time, but to make a movie like that now, you don't do that. Like you really need to consider and think about these things. And so it walks this really fine line of wanting to really embrace those movies but not not completely fall into those traps. And I think it mostly succeeds. There's definitely some problematic moments in this movie in that regard, but it doesn't feel like watching True Lies, right? Like it just like it.
I still need to watch True Lies. That's something I'm going to do before season 7 of the Say Report. That's a Say Report promise. I think it's somewhere. Yeah, it does. Was it Second Gang that was the like occupying force? Is that the name of that group?
I couldn't tell.
I don't know, because then they were also like, I put on a random Batman the Animated Series episode, and they were also in that, and I'm just like, I forget that like I heard that, and I'm like, I know that they're a DC like entity. I know that they're one of the. It's
it's like saying the Foot Clan. Like it just gives you an excuse to just have a bunch of dudes that all look the same, all be thugs in your way, right? Like it's just they're not. I don't know much deeper lore than that about them. They're just hired putties,
right? But it was really funny when I like put on like a random Batman the Animated Series, and they're like, it looks like it's Second Gang again, and I'm like, oh my god, I forgot like how much they use that for people who aren't reading comics. It was really kind of a cool little moment.
Yeah, no, I mean it has a lot of really good ties to the comics. It has a really good old school action feel. One of the big things that I've seen a lot of people saying in response to the movie, and I want to make it clear that this is not coming from me because I don't understand how you read movies like this, but apparently the ways in which The Rock is able to be funny without being The Rock funny, like quotes around The Rock funny. Apparently that's a style of funny, and like this idea being that like he's actually able to tell jokes that aren't like normal Rock jokes. I don't know what that means.
Oh, okay.
But I love that people are enjoying it because of that.
You know what?
Because I do think there is some really good solid humor in it. It is some dark
Oh,
humor.
it's really
Like
dark shit.
dark.
Yeah.
But it is funny.
Yeah. Can I give you my quick elevator pitch for how the sequel of this movie goes?
Yes, please.
Because one of the things that Sejohn said, like, first time out of it was, I don't know how you make Black Adam a hero after everything we just saw in that movie. And
Yeah.
so in my mind, that was the solution I was trying to find, was how do you make Black Adam a hero? And here's what I came with. Semi-spoilers for the first Black Adam movie. It's also inspired by the other line that Sejohn had was, I don't know how you make Black Adam a hero, and that was the best episode of Legends of Tomorrow that I've ever seen. Those were the two. That was Sejohn's, like, immediate reaction to this film.
Yeah, I mean, it really was. It was
Yeah.
probably my favorite mid-season finale arc of Legends of Tomorrow that they've done in a long time.
Oh yeah, it was fantastic. And I knew exactly what he meant when he said it. But then with those two statements in mind, this is what I developed as like the quick pitch for Black Adam 2. And that is, so the movie ends with Superman being like, well, Black Adam, I got you, you're on my radar now. So we pick up right from there. And Black Adam, being a creature of magic, that means that Superman is weak to him. Literally, the best argument against well, you don't want to put Superman against Starro. What if Starro takes over Superman? Is she didn't do that with Black Adam. Because she put Superman to fight a magically powered character who, like, that's the worst thing for Superman to fight.
Here's the exact thought process that went through my head as you started giving me this shit. Because I realized at the end of it that you were right to do so. Because here's my exact thought: was I was like, yeah, but Black Adam doesn't know that. So what she's doing is she's sending in Superman to prove that she has access to the best of the best. But then I realized that my own thing about how he wouldn't know much about Superman meant that he wouldn't fucking know that Superman was best of the best either. So it really is the worst kind of decision.
Like, first of all, he doesn't know how revered Superman is in any way, shape, or
fuck all.
form. He
doesn't know about the magic weakness. He doesn't know how revered he is. So it doesn't work in either direction. He's
you
not
just
intimidating
put a wall in front of me, and up to this point, my reaction to a wall in front of me is to walk through it. Good job, Amanda Waller. So then my thought is, you start right from there. Black Adam 2 immediately starts in that moment, and Black Adam
killing Superman.
He kills Superman. Just like beginning of Endgame, Thanos is dead. Black Adam murders Superman, and then, because he doesn't think about it, he just does it because that's the type of character that he is. Superman not being there allows some darker evil to, like, finally manifest and come to the earth.
Of course, because that's how it always works.
That's how it always works out, right? And Black Adam tries to fight it and is unable to do so. And then in the last moment, he is saved by the Legends of Tomorrow in their little time ship, right? Like, because he was fighting against it. They don't know that he's not some hero. Or maybe they do know that, and they're like, you were the only one who had a chance to defeat them, but we knew you couldn't win this battle because of time, right? So then, your new Justice Society of America is essentially the Legends of Tomorrow, right? A bunch of characters like that. And what Black Adam has to do with the Legends of Tomorrow is go back in time and defeat himself before he kills Superman. And in thus defeating his literal self, who would have killed Superman, that's how he becomes a hero. Because he has defeated all of the negativity and anti-hero stuff in that moment, after learning what it really means to be a hero from the Legends of Tomorrow. There's your movie. That's what it should be.
Look, I would say that it's pretty dumb, but honestly, it's about on par with everything that happens in this one.
Yeah, no, like you also did. Yeah. So the three tenets that I took to put that together was your two initial responses to that movie, right? I'm like, I need to satisfy those two things. But then the third thing is it needs to be in line with the logic that was on display in Black Adam.
Yeah. So before we close up on Black Adam, because there's a couple of other things I want to talk about,
do.
but you had me look up beforehand the meaning of the spell Shazam.
Yeah.
So what? Wait, like, what's the deal with that? I didn't even realize it was what is it called?
It's an anagram? Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even realize it was an anagram.
So here's the crazy.
Did we know that? Were we told that in the first movie?
I've always known that. It's one of those stupid things that I have always taken to heart ever since I read my first Shazam Billy Batson comic at a dentist's office when I was 7 years old. And like, it was literally like a 1-page thing in a don't smoke comic book. And he's like, with the power of the wisdom of Solomon, the strength of Hercules,
you know what? I know all of that.
Yeah.
I think I never realized that all wrote out Shazam.
Yeah.
I don't know why I never figured that out. And they probably even outright tell you in a bunch of shit, and I just like never got there. Right. I feel like embarrassed.
It's okay. Well, they told me in the smoking ad, and it's something that I've always just held on to. Was it endurance of Atlas, power of Zeus, courage of Achilles, speed of Mercury? Just because if I don't finish it, it's like come sail away and Eric Cartman. But then what I didn't realize is that Black Adam also had Shazam as his little activate my powers code word. Because everything that I've ever seen with Black Adam has always been him as Black Adam. I never knew that there was like the Teth Adam alter ego. I never knew that he had a Billy Batson.
Oh, it's powered down, right? Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah.
Because like it's one of those situations where like he literally never powers down in almost anything. And then it's really great though because Amanda Waller's like, you need to get him to say Shazam. So then Hawkman has that moment where everybody's like, all we have to do is get him to say this word. And then I'm thinking like, the way that he's acting, you could just like write that down on a whiteboard and he might stupidly read it.
He might just look at it and go, Shazam?
Like, I'm just like, I mean, like, he is very dumb about the world.
Well, I think, and they don't spell this out, but it's not just that he needs to say the word. He needs to intentionally do it to be powering down, to talk to them powered down. Like, I don't think that, because once he powers down, he can just power back up just by saying it again.
Yeah, exactly. Like
there's no, so it needs to be an intentional thing. I think that's what they're implying, but they don't say it.
They don't ever say.
They act like he's like Mr. Mixelpix, and like they just need to like trick him into saying it.
As long as we get him to say his name, we'll win this fight. And it's like, okay,
well, not quite how it works.
And then it's not even how it works in the movie because like, even though he has a tube down his throat to breathe for him, he's still able to go.
Yeah, right. He's just able to just like, yeah. At what point does the spell take place? Clearly, like lips and teeth don't have to be involved.
Yeah, exactly.
Can he just like grunt like with like the right... like, does that do it? I mean, apparently,
that's what we saw in the movie, right? It's just like this sort of weird little moment of it. But what I didn't realize that like Shazam was also his word, but it makes sense.
Actually, that's terrifying. I find myself sometimes, especially as I'm like falling asleep, or if I'm like sitting up and watching Adult Swim or something like that, and I'm just like passing out. I will sometimes say out loud a thing that I'm thinking, just like without realizing that I just said it, and like. That's a nightmare scenario that you're just like you're kind of in like a waking dream start of your sleep and you just happen to say your code word and just like Hulk out in your bed.
Right? I don't know. Is this some scary stuff that you're thinking about? Maybe it's like your air horn moment in
Does intention need to be there? Man, magic in the DCEU now makes no sense.
Thanks
a lot, Black Adam.
It's never made sense. It's always circumstantial, and that's my favorite part about magic in the DC universe. Not even the extended universe. Like the fact that like Superman's weakness is magic is something that is like tossed around. Like, it's ridiculous. And I love it. I love that it's all
I just love the idea that Superman could be defeated by Chris Angel. Like, that's that.
Where the fuck did you put the Statue of Liberty? My mind! It's been
in my
freaked!
palace.
What happened to Superman? Chris Angel mind freaked him. What the fuck does that mean? We don't know, but he's been in a comatose state since he saw it happen. I don't even know.
Damn you, Chris Angel.
But then to find that, and then what I found, and this was before I saw the movie that I realized that he had the code word, and then I saw what all of them were, and I'm like, oh, those are all Egyptian gods. That's interesting, because, Billy Batson's phrase sort of collects from mythologies, right? Because you have Zeus, which is Greek gods, but then you also have Mercury, which is Roman gods. And then you have Solomon, which is legitimately Christianity and the Bible. Right? And then you have Hercules, who's only a demigod, and he's just everything, right? Like, he's basically your Jesus figure up and down religions across the world.
Well, that's what
right?
it is, right? It's like when in the Billy Batson Shazam of it all, it is a very whitewashed figure. Yeah. And it's really interesting that they really lean into that the opposite of that, I guess, with
Black Adam. But then it's also the fact that in the books he is supposed to be from Egypt. So he is given the strength of all these Egyptian gods. I think because those are the gods who the wizards are there being like, well, he'll believe in these ones, but also, because I think it's like an ever-evolving sort of thing. And then there's also, and fuck these people, I just need to say it straight up, the people who believe that the exclamation mark represents the seventh god. You want to go mad on the internet? Read about that exclamation point in Shazam's name and what that stands for. Because I think that leans into the intention part that you were talking about.
That's true. It has to be screamed or grunted, apparently. Well, so it's weird. So there is this weird element to it where it's supposed to be Egyptian, but he's not Egyptian, right?
He's not Egyptian in the movie. I mean, I don't know. He's always been a slave. It's always been that he is a slave who was given this to overthrow his oppressors. And
historically, slaves they were brought in from everywhere, right? So it was any people that they could get their hands on that they could subjugate, they brought in. So by making him a slave, he could be from anywhere. It's a definite weird thing that it leans so heavily into this very Egyptian-like mythology and all of that. But then at the end of the day, this character is not an Egyptian character. It was wild.
It was just this weird, crazy thing, and that's why I wanted to do it. So we had it because I know I've always had Billy Batson's code word and what that stands for, except for the exclamation point. I couldn't tell you that right now, but I'm not a big fan of that school of thought that it's some seventh deity.
Nice.
But it's one of those. It's just one of those. So then it's real interesting to look at what is chosen to give Black Adam diversity, and then also the New 52 comes along and just no, it stands for the same thing. We complicated matters a bit, and it's okay, but then can't anyone just say the word?
Yeah. Does there have to be a level of faith involved here? Or is this like the Boy Scouts where we say that a lot, but nobody really pushes it?
It's a strange, wacky and wild thing. But my big takeaway is go see Black Adam, and if you like my idea for Black Adam 2, which is Black Adam TOO, because there's Black Adam 2 in that. Yeah, let me know, because I'm
excited. See Shazam 2 with arms wide open.
Fury of the Gods. Which,
yeah.
If Amanda Waller's Nick Fury, there's a pretty good connective. I don't freaking know. I mean, the real big connective tissue between Shazam and Black Adam is that both of them end with Superman, but one of them you get to see his face.
Only one of them actually firmly plants itself in a Henry Cavill Superman universe. The other one doesn't dare to, and it might surprise you which. Oh shit.
All right, so there's something else that happened that's kind of a big deal, especially with the topics that we talk about at the Say Report, and that is Netflix has finally gone ad tier.
Yeah, yes,
I don't
and
know
that's the
how
right
to.
way to say
Yeah,
it. Ad supported is being thrown around a lot, but that's not entirely the case because that implies that you just get ads everywhere on that, and that there. But as Devin pointed out, it is not that. It is a specific tier of Netflix is now available that is ad supported, so that it can be cheaper for people to
for the
watch.
consumer. There's some caveats for paying only $6.99 a month for Netflix. Only one device can be logged into the account at a time and using it, which is interesting. They don't mention that anywhere though. I had to go to a secondary
Well,
page to get that information.
I guess I kind of figured that was implied, and that's on me. I'm not saying that they shouldn't clarify. They totally should. But I was just thinking that the cheapest tier of Netflix is already that, right?
Right. But it's
So if
not
they introduce an even cheaper one, I don't see why you'd expect them to include more screens than the cheapest
yeah,
option of the ad free.
which is true and fair and understandable, but it is also weird that if they're as they're spelling everything out in that handy dandy chart of
Oh
which
yeah,
one of these do you want to subscribe to, that is not included at all.
the number of
Because then
screens
the
that a
other
device.
thing
Yeah.
is that's new with the ad supported tier is that there are a bunch of shows that you don't have access to on ad supported level. And
So
there was a list that went out, and that was the reason why right now I'm the craziest person in the world because I currently have two Netflix accounts. I have my normal high tier premium one. And I also, for the show, specifically for the show, after I discuss it with some people at breakfast this morning, I am going to throw $7 at Netflix to see what the ad-supported experience is like,
okay.
and it is awful. And that is, I only got to tool around with it for one day. I have it until December 6th, so I'm going to spend some time with it. I know that, but the first reason why I say it's awful is when you search for things, they are all too happy to populate the results page with shit that you do not have access to. There is
Oh, they're
no
using the
reason.
same
Yeah.
algorithm. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
not. It's not a different algorithm for anybody searching on that particular type of account.
Right.
That sucks.
Well, no, there's also, I actually think it might be a different algorithm trying to get you to FOMO to spend $3 additional
Oh, so it's
to
even
get
worse.
that.
Is they
I
went out of
think,
their way to purposely show you more shit
yeah.
that you don't have
Like,
access to. I
so
see.
the,
Okay.
the post
Malicious
that,
intent.
yeah.
Jesus.
The first thing that I saw, which is the reason why I'm like, I think I actually need to give it a look, is discussing film on Twitter put many shows are not available on Netflix ad supported tier, including The Crown, Cobra Kai, Arrested Development, Breaking Bad, The Good Place, Grey's Anatomy, House of Cards, How to Get Away with Murder, New Girl, Peaky Blinders. So that, to me, is a very good scavenger hunt list to confirm or deny the claim that these are not available.
Right.
And The Crown and Cobra Kai, available right from the start. I watched a full episode of Cobra Kai. That was the one that I took like the most detailed notes regarding the type of ads that you're getting and everything. And there were 3 ad breaks in that. Each of them featured 2 ads. And I will say this, I have to give them the credit for this. The countdown to how many ads are left incorporates all of the ads that are going to play. It isn't just a countdown for the single ad, it is a countdown for all the ads. So
Okay.
like
How are they timed? Like, where are they placing these ad breaks? Is it just do they come out of nowhere and it's just like a set time on all? Like, am I always guaranteed to get an ad at 2 minutes in, no matter what's happening on screen?
no.
Or do they feel like they are tried to like fit to the show in some way?
So it all feels like theory at this point. Everything is theory right now. I have nothing to support or substantiate my findings so far. But I honestly believe something like The Crown and Cobra Kai, if they were not available before, what they were trying to do is find moments where they could put ads into them and it not disrupt the flow of the show.
Interesting.
And I think, like, and one of the big ones is for The Crown, the first episode of The Crown had 5 ad breaks in it,
Oof.
which was crazy. But I fast forward to all of the ad break sections, and it's like, Okay, well, they did it at a screen transition. It wasn't like somebody was mid sentence and they interrupted it. So
Yeah.
if they do have people who are cultivating everything that they're showing and being like, all right, well, this is the best time to put an ad in, it breaks the scene. It breaks the flow of it. The one that I will think of that I will mention is the episode of Cobra Kai I watched was Right Turn, which is the one that is all the Cobra Kai guys from the original movie come back to give Tommy one more great day. It's basically a Wild Hogs remake with
Nice.
with the guys from Cobra Kai, and it's a great episode. But like it's an episode where like I don't know where you put in the ads. Like that was the thought process in my head. And one of them was when Danny LaRusso is talking to the members of Cobra Kai who have decided to join Miyagi-Do. Spoilers for season 2, episode 6 of Cobra Kai. And he's like, what do we fight for? And the one parrots back the strike first, strike hard, no mercy. And he's like, no, what we fight for is this. And then the other guy goes, oh, I thought it was to not be a pussy. And then commercials started. And so, like, that was weird. If I were an advertiser, I don't think I'd love the word pussy being said before my...
A split second before my Tide commercial comes on?
Yeah. I mean, it's apartments.com with, what's his name there? Jeff Goldblum.
Jeff Goldblum.
So maybe it works out. But,
Actually...
But yeah, so it was just kind of weird. And like
that's interesting.
And I had to watch it twice to make sure
that's my best Goldblum.
It was pretty good Goldblum. It was scary. So that was interesting. But then the thing that I noticed is I searched for Arrested Development, and as you see, it comes up with Change Plan to Watch. But then the 4th show on that list when I searched for Arrested Development was The Good Place, which is also a Change Plan to Watch show. And I don't know how you get from Arrested Development to The Good Place. I don't know how those words would make that movie show.
Well, it's a lot of the same creative team and stuff like that, right?
So it's probably I wouldn't know. I didn't know that.
But also that is all. So supposedly, just to explain what they claim is what's going on, just so that we understand why Devin feels like something different is happening. Supposedly, what it is it is a combination of what you watch, what other people watch, and what basically like the again things like the creative team. There's like some algorithm that has to do with like the people behind it and maybe even the actors in it and stuff like that. So like all of that math goes into an algorithm that figures out what it recommends to you to watch next. Or when you search and they don't necessarily have the thing you're looking for, but they want to give you something to watch, it all feeds into that. So the reason The Good Place comes up is a combination of what other people who wanted Arrested Development but instead watched The Good Place. You have watched them in some fashion.
Well,
not saying you actually have.
For that one, that's interesting. The other thing is this is a completely new account. I set up a completely new account.
Right. So like that one may not be weighted so heavily. Yeah. But it will be weighted more heavily as time goes on and they collect more information on you. Right. And then the other big thing is just simply we can connect this like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon we can get from Arrested Development to Good Place. Fine, put it up. Like that's also just part of it. So like it is a weird it's either a weird coincidence that it gets up there and you're like, well, I can't afford this, but I can watch that, or like, yeah.
But both of them are Change Plan to Watch. So it's
the ways in which they are pushing you to get to a bigger plan sucks.
Yeah,
like that is heinous.
That's like, the reason why I say it's awful. Like that's why my gut reaction to it is that this is awful. Because the other really weird thing is like Breaking Bad was available and it had no ads in the first episode. And then like I'm wondering, did I hit a quota of ads for like this hour because I watched that episode of Cobra Kai and then buzzed through 2 episodes of The Crown to just watch ads? Like how were they focusing it through? And then I also saw the same thing happen when I looked up Grey's Anatomy and How to Get Away with Murder. No ads. So like, but they do have that big ABC Productions bumper ahead of them. So like that's kind of an ad into itself. But then things
that's the other side of all of this is it also all comes down to the ads have to be part of the whole rights situation now, right? Like that's the big part of this, is that the reason that you might be seeing some of this stuff is, as you pointed out, maybe ABC has negotiated with them that we'll give you more money to make this an ad-free experience for our
For your ad
customers.
tier. Yeah.
Right. But we get a nice big bumper at the start of each episode. Like there then basically becomes like we are now advertising on Netflix. That's huge, right?
Yeah.
So like I wonder if those kinds of conversations have started, and that's going to also affect how you see certain things.
Yeah. I mean, the really weird one is the final ad break on The Crown had advertising for Paramount Plus. Like that was like it was a Fire Country ad, and then it added watch live or on Paramount Plus. And I'm just like, Netflix has to have just not watched all the way to the end of this. Like
There's no way that I mean, I don't know, man. They're willing to play ball with all sorts of shit. I wonder if they'll be like, yeah, we'll advertise other streaming services. We don't care where the money comes from. It still spends.
yeah, it was just like one of those. Well, that was weird. And like even
Yeah,
Dale,
that is
who was
wild,
like
though.
Dale was in the room but not paying attention. She like paused her game and looked over and was like, "Why the fuck would they advertise for Paramount Plus on Netflix?" And I'm like, "That's a good point."
I mean, like, look, I will say, like, in the spirit of James Gunn coming out this week and talking about how it's not always about competition. Everybody out here always wants to act like what's going on behind these doors is this big, like, fight to get to the top. But they understand that a rising tide raises all ships, right?
Yeah.
So, like, if they can support each other or be there and allow this kind of shit to happen while making money off of it, like that, again, that's the other side of it. Is you better believe that if ABC comes to them or Paramount Plus comes to them and says, "Hey, we want to advertise our streaming service on your streaming service," Netflix is be stupid to just be like, "Well, sure, here's the regular price." Like, no, of course they'd be like, "Fuck no," and not unless you're willing to pay us this amount. And then Paramount Plus just nods their head, and Netflix just takes the money and runs.
You know, now that we're talking about it too, there is that weird backroom deal between Paramount with Netflix, which is how they got things like the Invader Zim movie, the Rocco
Yeah.
movie, and the Rise of the TMNT movie as well. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's part of it.
Yeah,
And
we all act like they're all at each other's throat all the time, but the worst thing about
they're
all
all
of this
price fixing,
is
motherfucker. It's
they're I mean they're all shaking hands. They're all best friends.
I don't know. It was an interesting experience, and I look forward to digging in a little bit deeper into it. Since I have it for the month, I don't think I'm going to continue having it after this month. But I will say right now to the listener, if there is something that you know is on Netflix that you want me to check out with my ad-supported tier, send it to us at the Say Report on Twitter, and I will do like Netflix ad reports through December 6th. Because I am interested. It is something that interests me enough to actually spend the $7 to get the information. But the biggest
glad one of us
travesty
is
is
doing
that That's My Boy is not available on ad support. I mean that's an Adam Sandler movie, guys. I care about that. But then the other really strange thing, if you'll allow me to indulge just a little bit, and I don't think we'll go as deep into it, is the same day that Netflix finally introduces the ad tier to their subscription model, they also released the show Blockbuster,
Yeah.
which is just like, that seems oddly cogent in some really gross ways. And I'll admit it straight up, I binged through Blockbuster as a former
only seen the
Blockbuster
first-
employee.
I've only seen the first episode.
Okay. And
so-
we could talk about the first episode here, but I'm glad that you've seen the first episode, because to me, and this is already listener approved because I workshopped some stuff at breakfast this morning, full behind the curtain moment. It kind of feels like Netflix puppeting the corpse of Blockbuster as a final fuck you. Right? Like in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Some might say rightly so, considering what happened.
Considering how
between them.
things went down, yes. I mean, the backstory there, hopefully you know the story, because it's kind of like lore of modern age, is that Netflix originally went to Blockbuster, and Blockbuster's like, "You'll never make money with this terrible business plan. Go eat rocks." And
Yeah,
Netflix ate those rocks and turned them into diamonds.
and yeah, and essentially, like, the important bit is that it wasn't just apparently a rejection, it was like a mean one, like
Yeah.
a straight up like laughed out of the room style rejection, that it like was fuel for the fire for the guys that created Netflix to like be like, fuck Blockbuster so hard, we're gonna bring the entire system down. And now here we are in 2022.
2022.
And so yeah, so you're not wrong, Dev. You're not wrong in the least. It definitely feels like they're just kind of pointing and laughing in a really unfortunate way.
It's less
That being
alas poor
said,
Yorick, I know him, and more, hi everybody, I'm Yorick. I was kissed a little boy. That's my Yorick voice. Poor Yorick. Hamlet would be so mad at me if he weren't back. If he were back from his time overseas with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Ha! Sometimes we had high culture so that people think we're smart.
if they hold on to that letter, they ain't coming back. But
Thank you so much for what you just did there. I love us. I love this show. Oh, I'm glad that we rebound after the terrible Halloween episode. But yeah, what more like I cut you off there to do a fake Yorick puppet.
no, I don't know what we were talking about now.
The show Blockbuster.
Yeah, no, I will say though that it does have some heart. Again, you've watched more of the show than I have, so maybe it suddenly gets real mean real fast. But it's doing that thing that it pretty much guaranteed it was going to do when it started mentioning that it was from like the creators of Brooklyn Nine-Nine and The Good Place and all that shit. Like it's taking a lot of this really dark kind of side of the consumerism on display, and finding people in it that are just human beings stuck in the moment, and that's what those guys are really good at doing, and I feel like it does that.
I'm excited for when you watch more Blockbuster, because I imagine there'll be more talk about Blockbuster.
Yeah, I think so,
but
for sure.
With me as somebody who can differentiate between the episodes with what I watched, my initial response after the first episode was how they could never stay in business. First of all, it's a terribly set up store. I don't know why he has an office the size of the entire store over everything to like look over
windows.
it like a factory. Like I'm like, that's not how Blockbuster works. Their cashier.
You'd be lucky if you had a broom closet.
Yeah, exactly. Our break room was the hallway to the bathroom. That was the break room we had at our Blockbuster that I worked at. And then it was like a tiny little alcove that had a half desk in it. And that was so that the shift people could like count out money. The fact that there are 6 people working is ridiculous. Like that's wages you need to pay to each worker. Like it would be nice if you had 3 people on at any given time. The crazy nights, like Friday night, we would have 4 people working, and I was only there. That was the shift I worked. I worked from 4 to 9 as the entertainment consultant. Which
I think what you're getting at though is like the whole thing is taking place in and this could be said of any of their shows. I think this is right in style with everything that they've done.
Yeah.
Is this is very much taking place in like a romantic comedy style world, where like people have impossible jobs, make impossible money, and the concern is never finances. People can afford plane tickets to suddenly one day just on a whim go across the country, right? Like people can suddenly buy like the dream wedding for each other at the end, right? Unless it is like plot significant, but even then, by the end of the movie they're going to figure it out for some reason because it's a romantic comedy. Everything is safe, and that is the kind of realm that this is taking place in, which kind of makes the whole like puppeting the dead corpse thing feel even worse. Is like they're just treating it with such folly. It's just like it feels like we know this company is failing. We know the outcome.
We
here.
know this
like,
company failed. Like
right. Like we know that even if this place persists, it is going to be a ghost of what it once was. Like this is not something that we should be celebrating.
I mean, they only have one register, which blows my mind. And they have like this bookshelf behind that register that is a fucking mess. And now on one level, that's very true to form to Blockbuster, but you would never let customers see that. That stuff was shoved underneath in the cabinetry under your cash registers. You wouldn't have a fuck all bookshelf. Like that bookshelf could be post on premises shit. New releases could be kept there so that people could see, oh, you already have this in stock. Like
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it certainly wouldn't be
Yeah.
a bunch of fucking binders and paper. It's
I just can't
annoying.
get past this whole fucking thing of like they're just doing this in this failing company and they're trying to make it so much fun that they all work there and like it's part of the bit that it's failing, but like it's almost like setting a romantic comedy in like the 2008 financial crisis, and it is a group of like traders working at some like small offset arm of Enron or some shit. Like and it's just like these guys are not in a good place. These guys are not safe. They need to go.
Racing to the bottom of the darkness hole. It's like setting a romantic comedy at the Twin Towers in August 2001. That's how it feels to me.
And that's what Devin said.
That's what Devin said. I will take full responsibility for what I said, but also, ladies and gentlemen, and people who listen to the show, here, there, or otherwise, I have seen all 10 episodes. Understand that my read on it being, this is a love story, August 2001 at the World Trade Center Towers, that is after seeing all 10 episodes.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we're definitely gonna watch more of it and talk about it for sure.
And I'm excited to talk about it, but it is, as someone who worked at Blockbuster, it hits a little different, especially because I then went over to Hollywood Video, and our Hollywood Video persisted 2 years longer than the Blockbuster that was in town. I remember when the Blockbuster was shutting down, and I took my break from Hollywood to go over there and basically pick at the corpse in my Hollywood Video outfit. I felt like just kind of terrible doing it, but at the same time, I think I got
you start quoting Christmas Carol as you look through it, like gold rings.
I think I got my Transmetal Beast Wars game for N64 at that moment. Oh, I bought an N64 from them for $50. And it came with 4 controllers and the expansion pack. And that was the reason why I bought it. Because the expansion pack alone was going for like $200. It was nuts.
Man, now I just want to play N64. We got to wrap this up.
That's the point. That's the whole point. I want everyone to want to play N64. Last thing about the Blockbuster show, and I mean this, it's so weird that it's not set in Bend, Oregon. It's weird that they set it in like Michigan at some random Blockbuster and not the last actual factual Blockbuster that does exist, which also has to have sued because the original title for this show was The Last Blockbuster.
Well, I was going to say,
litigation.
I was given the impression that that was supposed to be what it was playing off of. Like it was kind of, and I mean, marketing wise and all of that, kind of, stealing their whole fucking bit of being the last Blockbuster. Like I always thought that was the point. So good on them for suing because
yeah,
oh man,
I don't know, but there'll be more talk on that. But I had to share it. The fact that I sat down and was like, I'm gonna watch all 10 episodes of this, and the real thing I wanted to do was go drink watermelon vodka in orange soda in the parking lot of the old Blockbuster. But none of the old gang is around anymore. So it would have felt real sad doing that alone without anybody else. And that's the way the news goes this week. Thank you for listening to the Say Report. If you would like to share your thoughts about the character of Black Adam, Sejohn is going through a bit of an awakening with the character, and I feel like he's really receptive to anything that you have to say about Black Adam and the world that he represents in DC Comics. So find him on Twitter at Siege versus the World.
And if you can come up with an atheistic version of the anagram Shazam for Devin to say so that he can change, so that his faith can finally be unlocked, his faith in nothing finally be unlocked, and give him powers, you can find him at Devin D. Decker.
Are you kidding me? The word that allows me to transform is Devin Decker! Will, please bring us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devin Decker and Sejohn Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.